Welcome back to Second Breakfast. This is an emergency pod. We're dropping this one out of nowhere. We're stepping all over our schedule. This is one of those bat signal episodes where we encountered a work of art that is so good and so exciting, and we just need to tell you about it immediately. This is one of the best indie horror movies I think I've ever seen. One of the most effective I've definitely ever seen in a theater.
Absolutely. I was so upset when we saw this movie in the best way.
So let's set the table for a second.
Okay.
This is Invader, new 2024 movie written and directed by Mickey Keating. What is it? It is a home invasion slasher. Which you guys know is the thing that gets to me most.
Yeah.
I can't stand home invasions and scary old people. No old people in this one.
No.
But the home invasion.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I want to keep this quick because this is just a quick hit to just get the word out. It's such a great movie. Go see it.
And we're not going to spoil anything.
No spoilers.
So no spoilers.
My recommendation, just to really lay it out there in the first 2 minutes here, this is The Strangers by way of the first Terrifier with the ferocity of the best found footage movie you've ever seen.
Oh, you are so right. That is a wonderful way to describe it.
See it in a theater late at night with as many people as possible. This is a lightning bolt of indie horror. So Maggie and I talked about this all the way home, and I've tried to inherit all of those notes into this discussion. So we've got two things we're going to hit. This is going to be short and sweet. First thing we want to talk about is the directing style.
Oh, man. It was so cool. So it was incredibly claustrophobic is the best way to describe it. It's very, especially at the beginning, like in the first 20 minutes of the movie, it's very up close and you really can't, you can never quite see exactly what's happening or exactly where you are or exactly who you're following. There's just a lot of quick, rapid movements and quick moving around, and you're kind of following their POV, but you're also kind of looking at them. But there are very few wide shots at the beginning, or at least enough establishing I can't tell even what room am I in or what's behind the character that I'm following. And it's very disorienting. But you pointed out, Cam, you never feel seasick.
No.
So it's
no.
It does this, it creates this sense of claustrophobia and panic and uncertainty without making you feel like you're going to throw up.
The first scene is the bad guy trashing a house. That's not really a spoiler.
No, it's the very first scene.
It also it establishes the ground rules for how this movie's going to feel.
Yes.
And the way the camera tracks the sledgehammer as it goes up and down, as it swings around.
Yes.
It almost feels like how your eyeball tracks a moving object.
Yeah, right. It's incredibly interesting directing style. I really liked it.
When you're following a character who's walking, there's a character who's dragging luggage behind her for a long stretch. And the way you are so tight over her shoulder, and it's shaky cam, but it's not Born Supremacy. It's just it's intimate and exposed, and you feel her nervousness.
Yes, yeah, this movie really taps into the emotions that the characters are experiencing. Even in I don't want to spoil it, but there's a sequence at the end of the movie that taps into a character's emotions in a way that you wouldn't expect, where you're sort of battling between how you feel and how the character feels. And I don't want to say anything beyond that, but it's really, really interesting. It's incredibly empathetic movie in an odd way.
The motion of the camera, it never lets you feel safe. It never gives you that stability. And sometimes stable cameras can be terrifying. The way James Wan puts his camera in the first couple Insidious movies.
Yeah.
It's so eerie where he puts it. And
it feels very surveillance style in Insidious. It was fun.
And what this does by having such a fluid movement of the camera, it never lets you get comfortable. You never settle into a perch. There's no omniscience. You always feel like you're seeing part of what's happening.
Yeah.
You don't
absolutely.
get the comfort of a bird's eye view. If a character is running and hiding, so are you. And you don't see everything for them. You can't take first watch for the character and help them. You're right there with them.
Yes. And there's a lot of uncertainty in this movie. I won't say much, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And you also feel that sense of uncertainty through this camera work that you're talking about. Again, it really helps you tap into how the characters are feeling. And especially in that first scene where the guy is smashing up a house, you don't really understand why he's doing it or what exactly is happening.
But you're uncomfortable.
And it's very confusing and very uncomfortable. And the movie really leans into a lot of that for the whole thing.
The effect of this directing style is that it creates a remarkable tension and an incredible level of investment and immersion into these characters' lives.
Yes.
The camera movement is constant, but again, you never feel seasick. And sometimes there's this like Indiana Jones swap where it's not the camera moving, but it's the characters moving.
Sure, yeah.
The finale of the movie, Home Invasion, takes place in a house. Sometimes the camera is almost stable in one position, but the characters are moving so much that you can see this like locked cat and mouse game as people come in and out of frame. There are these takes that you don't realize, like, oh, this is a long take. This is kind of the director flourishing for a minute.
Yeah.
You don't realize it until later, like, oh my God, I just held my breath for 2 minutes and that was one take.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I just like, you don't notice it at first. And then
Right.
once you're halfway through, you're like, oh God, it's that kind of thing.
And I think that brings us to the second thing we wanted to talk about. And this is the most amazing part of the movie. This is why we were so excited and got the tickets, and we've been looking forward to this one so much. The movie is 70 minutes long. An hour and 10 minutes.
It's a quickie.
It is such a tight, contained story. Really, there are just 3 characters, barely that many locations.
Yeah, right.
But they are so fully explored and exploited in the way that indie horror has always been so good at. It's this nerve-shredding simplicity.
Yes.
For example, that first scene is a woman arriving on a bus to an empty bus station. And there's this little lull after that scene, which is incredibly stressful for reasons I'm not going to spoil. But right after that, there's a bit of a lull, and we were thinking, like, I don't know. I felt like I leaned back in my seat a little, like, oh, was that the good part? And now we're just kind of padding.
Yeah, we really didn't know. We didn't like hardly anything about this movie when we went to go see it. We're like, okay, sure, indie horror, fine. And then we're like, oh, I think it's gonna not be that great.
But it's a feint.
And then
it's
we were so wrong.
It's like, oh, you think you can get comfortable? And then it white knuckles through the entire rest of the movie. I mean, it's so simple in such a lethal way. Girl gets off the bus, tries to go to a house, bad guy. That's the whole movie.
And you said it's only 70 minutes. I don't think I could have stood
yes.
another minute of that movie. It was so stressful and scary and upsetting, and it kept getting more upsetting. And I kept thinking, okay, I understand the flavor of this movie. I understand like the scope. Oh no, it keeps getting worse. It just keeps getting worse.
It's the level of tension. It's that slow ratcheting of tension. And the thing that really struck me from that first scene is this sense of unsustainable power and looming violence. The sound of the bad guy's boots.
Oh yeah.
And he's just a guy. He's not immortal. He doesn't have...
it's a very grounded story. Yeah.
I'm trying not to spoil things. The sound of his boots in the first scene will scare the shit out of you. It's every movement of him. The fact that he doesn't speak on screen. He's just a guy, but he has the magnetism of all the best horror icons.
Absolutely.
And
yes, he does.
It's also, the movie's also so effective. The tension is also so manifest because we get to know these 3, I guess 2 if you don't count the bad guy, characters so well that we are petrified for them. I was reminded a little bit of The Ritual, which is a movie we did an episode on a couple of years ago. And the thing that really stuck out to me in that film was the almost upsetting realism of the dialogue.
Yes, I remember that.
I don't think I've ever seen a movie with such realistic dialogue that sounded like just friends chatting and goofing on each other.
Right.
And that made the surreal and the horror that like was seeping into the movie so much scarier.
Yes, for sure.
And here, watching the female lead kind of feel out the male lead who is her missing cousin's coworker.
Yeah, because they don't know each other before this movie. Yeah.
They meet at the place where the cousin works, and then they have a little conversation. It's her kind of feeling out, is this guy okay? Sort of a vibe check.
Yeah, can he help me?
Am I comfortable even getting in his car?
Right, yeah.
The careful bond that they build in that sequence where these characters meet felt so shockingly realistic and well-paced and subtle in a way that just reminded me of real life. I can't think of anything in a movie I've seen that captured that process.
Well, and that's why this movie is so scary, is because so much of this feels so real. It wasn't heightened. It wasn't like over dramatized. There wasn't, I mean,
it was all possible.
Yeah. It all felt, yes, very, very possible. And I don't think this is a spoiler. In that first scene when he's smashing up the house, like a thing that I think really grounds us even more is while he's smashing the house, the TV is on, and the TV is playing the news, and they're talking about a like serial killer who is either has been caught or is still on the run or something.
Yeah.
And so like, and it sounds like real news footage. I think I need to go
Richard
back
Speck,
and
isn't
it's
it?
Richard Speck. That's who it is. I knew it was like, it's a real serial killer who like actually existed. And so it's like, it again, it's that grounding that feels so scary.
Grounded horror is, for me, much scarier because you cannot shake it off. You can't, I mean, yes,
Right.
there's like possible ghost stuff in Paranormal Activity, but the reason that shattered people's brains was because everyone had to then go home and go to bed.
Yeah, and sleep under a sheet.
Yeah, which means you're staring at the ceiling and listening to little like house noises.
Yes, right.
This has that because everyone's going back to a house or an apartment which has a door, and the movie starts with this stat from the FBI about how often people break into homes.
Yes.
Like, it has that, you can't shake it. It's that frantic sense. And even with such a short runtime, I agree with you. I don't think I could handle any more than this. I mean, my body was like contorting through this movie.
Yeah.
But I still left the theater after 70 minutes fully satisfied.
Oh,
like,
me too.
We should also mention, this is a complete story.
Oh yeah.
Unexpected
Yes.
twists, very savvy navigation of some things you expect in a horror movie, and it isn't like a clean pivot into something else that's showing, oh, we're smarter than tropes. It's just a very savvy original story.
It is, yeah. And it felt pretty like, it felt like a 2020s movie. Like it feels timeless in a way that like home invasion will always be scary and unfortunately will always happen. But there were like, it touched on some things like in a way that was not preachy or like trying to send a message or something. It was just sort of engaging with contemporary issues like things like racism or police violence, or the way that we don't trust institutions and stuff like that. Like it played with
Atomization.
that. Yeah, right. And also with like class distinctions and that kind of thing,
yeah.
and like wealth inequality and infrastructure problems in our nation. Like it played with all those things without the movie being about that. It was just kind of there, and it made you think about it, and it made it again all feel even scarier.
In the way that those things are ever present and scary and threatening in everyday life, but there is no camera to turn to like narrate about them.
Right.
Or a comment about them to an audience.
And there was no time to do that. It's 70 minutes long.
It felt, those issues, which are scary and real, they felt so baked into this world that, again, it contributed to that feeling of realism and possibility.
Yes, absolutely.
It was incredibly deft, agile commentary.
Yeah, it really, really was.
The last little, I want to just put a cherry on top of this because I think we're about to get out of here. Little shout out to the music. On top of having fantastic, brutal, wincing sound design.
Yeah, the sound design was incredible.
There's a moment where the screen goes dark, and then a song starts playing. And I had like an out-of-body experience because one of my favorite albums of all time, the best metal album ever recorded, is Sleep's Holy Mountain. And the lead single off of that, the most famous song from that band, is Dragonaut. And that song's playing on the radio here.
There's a
For
lot
like
of
a 5-minute sequence. They do like the whole song.
Yeah, it's pretty great. There's a lot of like heavy metal in this movie, and it's like played to do it accomplishes all kinds of things. It's really, really fun. But yeah, I looked over you looked so happy.
It was
sweet.
It was like the only deep breath I took during these 70
It was the only
minutes.
moment of joy that you experienced. Everything else was just absolute pure terror. Yeah, I mean, I've talked before about how I'm such a horror fan now, and I've watched so much of it, and I'm at the point where it's pretty hard to scare me in a way that is lasting. Like I get scared during movies because I'm just a sucker for jump scares. I will always jump, but often I can like leave the movie and be like, okay, I'm fine. This was one of those that stuck with me.
And sometimes horror movies work like magic tricks, where once you know how the trick works, it loses all of its excitement.
Yeah,
There's
you're
no
like,
mystique
oh, okay.
left.
Yeah, you're like, I see how it's going to go for the rest of the 30 minutes or whatever.
It's the rare horror movie that can scare the dog shit out of you while you're watching it and only get better the more you think about it in the days that follow. And that's how I think we're both feeling.
I agree.
This is so good. Total huge shout out to Alamo Drafthouse for showing this. I think they're some of the only theaters in the country showing it right now. But if you can, however you can watch this movie, it's so good.
It really was. Yeah, it is a wild ride. If you just like, sometimes, Cam, like when I'm like, I want to watch a horror movie, what I want is something like this. I want something that's just like, I just want to feel like a big adrenaline rush and like be really freaked out and like see some blood and have a good time. And this movie was exactly that kind of thing. So if that's what you're craving, go find this movie, seek it out and watch it.
Invader, written and directed by Mickey Keating. That's it from us at Second
good.
Breakfast. We have episodes on Tuesdays and Fridays. We have bonus episodes over on the Patreon, $2 a month. You can support the show and get, lately we've been 2 bonus episodes a month. We're doing a big journey through Dune. We're talking about book formats. We got all sorts of fun content over there. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Go check out Invader.
Yes.
That's it from us. Now we'll try to breathe normally for the next couple days.
See you later. Bye.